Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the neighborhood. It's your friendly neighborhood reviewer with another IM review. Today, we're taking a look at a very special IM to the channel, the Blon A8, or the Prometheus as it was named in its prototype stage. Speaking of its prototype, I was lucky enough to be one of the few reviewers selected to give Blon feedback and help them with the tuning notes of this IM. They sent me 2 units with 2 different tunings, and I was able to give them notes and feedback about each. Out of these 2 units, I really liked one of them, and had a limited amount of recommendations for them to consider. As I've been listening to that unit off and on since then, I've quite come to like it, and I had hoped that Blon decided to go with the tuning that I preferred. And I'm happy to say that they did that and more. It appears not only did they choose the IM that I preferred, but they also tried to improve upon it by adjusting the tips to result in a sound that seemed to come close to what I requested of them. So, without further ado, let's get into it. The build of the A8 is an interesting one, in that it's mostly a hollow cage-like shell with a small ball in the middle which houses the driver. This ball also appears to be slightly ported, giving these an interesting feel to them. Regarding isolation, they weren't the best, as this port seemed to almost result in a semi-open back feel to the sound. And because the frame is mostly open, this didn't help outside sounds from getting in. But the frame is constructed of a seemingly dense, sturdy metal material like other Blon IMs before it, so I think ruggedness won't be an issue for these. Weight is neither too light nor too heavy, and I can wear these for hours, but be aware, the fit can be somewhat shallow fitting with certain tips, so you'll want to find the right tips that work for you. Luckily, these don't seem to be super tip dependent in terms of their sound. While I like the adjustments that the new secondary set of ear tips made with these, I ultimately preferred Final Type E ear tips or SpinFit CP145s with this set, the latter of which was somewhat loose fitting and would fall off from time to time, so take that under advisement. The nozzle the tips affix to is gold, lipped, and on the larger side, but I had limited difficulty swapping in most aftermarket tips for use with this set. The connection at the cable is a flush 2-pin connection, and the ear hooks of the stock cable that these come with was neither too aggressive nor too loose fitting. Speaking of the cable these come with, it's very nice for a Blon. In fact, I'd say this is the nicest cable that they've ever included with an IEM they sell. And really, it should be a nice cable for the price they are charging for this set at $88, which is a bit ambitious for a Blon in my opinion. But yeah, the cable terminates in a nice 3.5mm TRS jack that is both smaller and sleeker than most. The cable itself winds and unwinds easily and has limited memory, even with frequent use. In terms of the sound, the A8 is reasonably forward sounding, but balanced with a robust and dynamic moderately detailed low end. It's not as forward sounding as something like a K-Bear KS1, but it's going in that direction. Like the KS1, even if these graph is V-shaped in some manner, they really do not sound that V-shaped to the ear. So expect a shallower V than that of the Blon offerings of the past, at least auditorily. Clarity, resolution, and technicalities of the A8 are also a step above anything else that Blon has produced to date. While it may not be as proficient as offerings from the $100 to $200 price range, such as the Tangent Hana, Ica OH10, or Tri-Star-C, overall, you are still getting a great sound from these in the $50 to $100 price range here with the A8. Regarding its peripheral detailing, it's simply just a standout characteristic of the A8, and the vocal presentation also makes the listener take a step back and take notice. Vocals are not overly forward, but they still stand out, and like the rest of the mix, they are never harsh nor sibilant. The soundstage isn't the widest, but it is natural and with good dimension and excellent immersion to it. Globally, I would say that the stage is slightly above average in its width and height, with an excellent depth of field at the same time. Unlike prior Blons, nothing appears stretched or smeared to my ears. Instrument distinctiveness is slightly above average, and individual note weight separation is good, but it can get somewhat confused on busier tracks. Still, the A8 almost sounds open at times, and I'm not sure if it's the small port in the tiny housing of the driver inside the cage-like structure or what, but these do have an open-like sound to them. The song, Can't You Say You Believe in Me, Still in Love by Boston, is a good recording that depicts this feature. On the flip side, as I've already mentioned, outside sounds also do get in, and they also do not isolate very well as a result. The A8 would not be an IM that I would recommend to a commuter, as they will be influenced by excessive outside noise. Positively, Air is ambient and natural sounding in its amount and accent, and not overemphasized. So do not expect an overly airy set, but there is a mild appropriate amount of air here for most genres nevertheless. Also, unlike other previous Blons, both treble and bass extensions are pulled off well in the A8. I mean, there is actual treble here. Is it the best treble extension in the world? No, but it's certainly respectable, enjoyable, and considering the price point, well executed, without too much roll-off to it. Neither did I find the mid-range to be lacking nor over-embellished. Regarding the bass, there is a healthy quantity, but I don't find the low end to be overly encroaching upon the mid-range here. In other words, the low end mostly stays put where it should, but at the same time also contributes a good amount of warmth to the A8 still. In terms of power requirements, this is where things get a little bit interesting. They did play well off the headphone jack of my Note 8, but I did notice that not every headphone jack would do with these, as they did require a bit more power than your average IM to get the most out of them. For instance, they sounded great balanced out of the BTR3K, but underpowered off the single-ended output. It seemed the more power I could give these, the better. I mean, within reason. In fact, I really enjoyed these on the iFi IDSD Micro that I had in for review at the same time as these. With increased power, separation increased, along with a sense of additional space and dynamism. So, in the $50 to $100 price range, there's certainly a lot of competition out there right now. But the Blon A8 surely stands out both in terms of its design and its sound. And yet, if you're keeping up with the channel, you'd know that I reviewed the Moondrop Aria too, another IM in the marketplace that stood out to me at $79. In comparison to that set, I'd say the A8 at least competes, and in some ways, I like the A8's detail retrieval and technical capabilities more. But, then again, I also suppose that will come down to personal preference. The A8 also cost a bit more at $88, and unlike the Aria, you're going to need to spend a bit more in addition to that in order to tip roll the A8, as its package is not as complete as that which comes with the Moondrop Aria. For example, the A8 doesn't come with a nicer case like the Aria does. Yet, the Aria is less forward sounding in comparison to the A8 as well, and some will prefer it for being somewhat more relaxed in its presentation, even if in the end the Aria is less articulate than the A8 despite being similarly priced. So with that said, my biggest gripe with the A8 is that it's somewhat limited as a value proposition, both in terms of its price and its package. When I was able to preview this set, I had hoped that Blon would have stayed truer to its budget roots, and priced the Prometheus more around $65 or so. As like I've already said, the A8 can't really keep up with other notable IMs from the next price tier, those beyond $100 and up, even if it may be one of the best IEMs at or around its own price. In other words, the Blon A8 sounds great for an IEM under $100, and I'd be hard-pressed to say anything in particular within the $50 to $100 price range sounds notably better, even if I don't think it's really a good value for its own price per se. In the end, I still think that you get what you pay for here at $88, even if its price tag feels somewhat ambitious at the same time. So if you dig its unique alien-like design, and you're willing to provide it with enough power to thrive, then you're surely to enjoy the Blon Prometheus A8. And before I go, make sure that you like this video and give it a big thumbs up, and also consider leaving a comment. I really enjoy interacting with you guys, and leaving comments helps not only the YouTube algorithm, but helps me interact with everybody in the community. Additionally, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Subscribing to the channel really helps me out, and it lets everybody know that you support the neighborhood and everything that I do here. Furthermore, there's also a website, www.intoitreviews.com, an Instagram, a Twitter, a Discord, and a Patreon. So make sure you check out the links in the description below, as those will help you access the channel at all its other social media locations. And with that, I'm out for now.